couple things I want to add. One is that the framing I like to think about is very simple. When you're asking a question, make it easy to receive help. That is the guiding principle of the past few slides, is that everything you do should make it as simple as possible for the person who you want to answer to actually spend their time helping you. What I sometimes see a mistake that people make is that they are working on this massive project and they get stuck and they'll basically say, here's my whole project. And that's an okay starting point. But if you really want to make it easy to get help, then what you should probably do is spend the extra effort to actually figure out how to strip away all the extraneous information and get the smallest reproducible example of the bug or the issue that you're facing, right? And that's a really concrete way of, making it easy to receive help. Now, instead of having to go through 1,000 lines of code to figure out like what you're doing, I can look at 20 or 30 lines of code and say, okay, here's where the issue is happening. Now it's way easier. It's like the incentive for me to actually feel like I can give you help is way higher because you've done that work of making a much more tractable example, going back to this idea of complexity, right? And then one other practical thing I'll say is that when I was at Pinterest, I had this tech lead who was really amazing. And of course, I would ask her questions all the time. And but what happened is I noticed a pattern of whenever I would ask her a question, I would almost always get a question in return. So for example, I would say, okay, like I have this compile issue in Android and I don't really know what's happening. And then the first thing she would say is, okay, well, have you tried doing a clean build on your Android app? Or I would say, I'm getting back unexpected data from the server. She would say, okay, well, have you tried putting a breakpoint at this point in the code? And over time, I started to anticipate the question that she would ask. So before going to ask her the question, I would think about it in my head and say, okay, what will she tell me to try next? And then I would actually do that before going to ask her and say, okay, I think here's the issue. Here's a couple of things I tried. What is the next question you're going to ask? And then it's like playing this game with yourself of when you go and ask that question, what is the question you're going to get thrown back at you? And if you play that game enough, I feel like that has been a really effective way for me to level up the questions I get and make it much easier for much faster and easier for people to help me.